The first thing you notice is not the extra time. It's the silence where an alarm used to be. No jolt at 6:47 a.m. No groaning negotiation with the snooze button. No half-conscious stumble toward a coffee machine you needed just to become a functional person. You open your eyes because you feel like it. Your body simply does not require anything else from the dark. 8 hours of biological debt, erased, not reduced, not optimized, gone. That is the rule. One morning the human body stops needing sleep, not just this generation, everyone, permanently. The sleep switch gets turned off, and the world wakes up to itself without realizing what just cracked underneath it. People assume the obvious consequence. More time, more hours in the day, more productivity, more everything. That is the first wrong answer. The first thing that actually breaks is dinner. Dinner was not just a meal, it was a finish line. You ate at a certain hour because bedtime was coming. The structure of an entire day, when you worked, when you stopped, when you let yourself rest, was quietly organized around the countdown to unconsciousness. That countdown is now missing, so people eat at 11 p.m. and feel nothing socially weird about it. They eat at 3 a.m. A meal that used to signal the day is ending now floats loose. Restaurants start staying open through the night within a week. Not because there's sudden demand, but because the reason to close no longer exists. Then the bedroom changes. This happens slowly, and it's oddly unsettling. A third of every home, in square footage, in design logic, in furniture cost, was built around a room you now do not need. Not to live in anyway. The bedroom doesn't disappear immediately. People are sentimental. Some keep them. Some lie down out of habit. For the first few months, millions of people voluntarily horizontal themselves in the dark for 20 minutes, feel nothing, and get back up slightly embarrassed. Eventually the bed becomes a couch, then a storage shelf, then an architectural footnote. Bedroom-free apartments start selling faster. Urban planners slowly realize that an entire category of floor space just became negotiable. Now compressed 3 months into one thought, the real estate industry quietly begins repricing the world. But the stranger break happens in human attention. The brain, under normal conditions, gets bored. One of sleep's lesser-known functions is that it quietly resets the brain's motivation system, its ability to want things, to tolerate discomfort, to stay curious. Without sleep, the research suggested that system would degrade. But in this version of the scenario, it does not degrade. It just never resets. And that turns out to be different from stable. People find themselves in a state of permanent, mild engagement, never deeply tired, but also never genuinely fresh. The world after the first week has a slightly flat quality, like music with the dynamic range compressed. Things are fine, nothing is vivid. A shower feels good. It does not feel like the best shower of your life, the way the first one after a long sleep sometimes would. What nobody predicted, boredom becomes the rarest luxury. Before, boredom was an emergency. People filled every gap with a phone, a podcast, a background video. They could not tolerate unstructured minutes. But that intolerance was partly because waking life was finite. 8 hours removed from every day meant that empty time felt like waste. Now time is genuinely infinite. The uncomfortable arithmetic of the old world, I only have 16 waking hours, why am I doing this, no longer applies. A strange calm starts to develop in some people. Not peace exactly, just a different relationship with wasted time, because time is no longer a resource being drained. The productivity economy, meanwhile, does exactly what you would expect. Employers immediately try to turn the extra 8 hours into labor. Contracts are revised. Expectations quietly double. In some industries, the shift is enthusiastic and immediate. Logistics, medicine, manufacturing. A 24-hour human workforce is not a hypothetical anymore. Supply chains start restructuring around the assumption that workers do not need to stop. Delivery networks begin promising 2-hour windows at 4 a.m. with a straight face. The first real labor conflict of the new world is not about wages. It is about off time, the legal right to simply stop working in a world where your body gives employers no natural excuse to let you go home. Unions fight for mandatory rest periods even though the body no longer needs them. They win some of it. Humans, it turns out, still need to not be at work. But here is the consequence that arrives quietly, from a direction nobody was watching. Dreams are gone, not as an inconvenience, as a psychological infrastructure. Humans had been doing something during sleep for hundreds of thousands of years that they never properly appreciated. Processing grief, rehearsing futures, building emotional distance from things that hurt. The sleeping brain was not idle, it was sorting, running overnight maintenance on the emotional filing system. With sleep removed, that process simply stops happening. Feelings do not get filed. Arguments from Tuesday are still sitting, unprocessed, on Friday. Grief does not soften the way it used to. Not because people become crueler, but because the quiet biological mechanism that used to do the softening, the REM sleep that literally replays and rewrites emotional memory, is no longer running. Therapy expands, not metaphorically. Clinical psychology becomes the fourth largest industry in most developed countries within 5 years, not because people are mentally ill, because they are mentally unregulated in a way they used to be without knowing it. And then the overlooked second-order effect appears, which is the one nobody could have predicted from the outside. Religion changes, not disappears, changes. A significant portion of human spiritual life across nearly every tradition was built around night, the dark as metaphor, rest as grace. Sleep as a small death, resurrection as morning. The architecture of sacred time assumed vulnerability, assumed surrender. You could not control sleep, you fell into it. Something happened in that falling that language never fully caught. Without it, the mystical vocabulary of surrender quietly loses its most accessible reference point. Some traditions adapt by finding new language. Some quietly contract. A version of prayer that was partly about lying down in the dark and not being in charge of what happens next, that version has no obvious home anymore. The contrarian read, of course, is that nothing collapsed. People adapted, as they always do, the economy restructured, architects adjusted blueprints, workers negotiated new contracts, psychologists got busier. Society did not fall. It continued, in its strange new shape, mostly forward. But the uncomfortable truth the scenario surfaces is this: a large part of what made human life feel like it had a rhythm, a reason to stop, a built-in permission to let go of the day. That was not productivity. That was not efficiency. That was the dark, the mandatory surrender that nobody designed, nobody scheduled, and nobody could be blamed for taking. Remove it, and people gain 8 hours. They spend the first year trying to figure out what the hours were for in the first place. The answer, it turns out, was not more. It was the stopping.